In this episode of the Omega Podcast, Tommy Fisher shares how intentional networks and purpose-driven leadership accelerate growth for executives and entrepreneurs.
Welcome to the Omega Podcast with Tommy Fisher, who is the co-founder of X Factor Group, a Boston-based community that brings together ambitious entrepreneurs, real estate professionals, and business leaders to create meaningful connections and real opportunities. Through curated events and strategic partnerships, Tommy focuses on helping driven individuals accelerate their growth personally and professionally by providing the structure to build the life they've always dreamt of. Tommy, it's such a pleasure to have you on the Omega Podcast.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to our conversation today.
Yes, me too. And I know our audience is super excited to hear from you specifically. But before we unravel your specific path to entrepreneurial ventures, success, and obviously building such a thriving community in the Boston-based area, can you share more about yourself that isn't highlighted in your bio?
Yeah. A little bit more. I mean, what specifically do you want to know, Keenan?
Well, I think for our audience, they definitely would love to learn more about, how'd you get started with X Factor Group? What type of experiences did you have leading up to launching such a successful community-based organization?
Definitely. Yeah. So I think one important thing to note is that growing up, sports was my whole life. Always played baseball, basketball up until high school, and football as well. So sports took up a majority of my time. So I was always around that team atmosphere. I played baseball at Bentley in college and ended up having a financial advising internship my junior into senior summer that turned into a full-time career after that. So right out of college, hit the ground running as a financial advisor, where ultimately that's where I met my business partner and co-founder of X Factor, Griffin Clark. So as we came into our financial advising class together, and we immediately hit it off. Now, when we had first met, we had both gave each other like the little stink eye, like, all right, who's gonna be the top dog here? You know what I mean? One of those coming into the class, because we're both highly driven, highly motivated. We are both very growth oriented. So, but as soon as we got that over with, we realized we had a couple common friends, but both had very, very large visions for ourselves, and we wanted to ultimately team up and see what we could do together. So as financial advisors, we were both building up our books of business. We were networking with people, going to networking events, having coffee meetings. And over that time, we had probably before X Factor had happened, we had probably networked with about 1,000 to 2,000 people. And we realized that there was a lot of fluff that was going on. Networking events where people were in the corners or in their group together, people that were just wanted, if you could either send them business or be a client themselves. And then if you weren't, then they wouldn't necessarily, then after that, the conversation stalled. We grabbed coffees that didn't always lead to opportunities. And we just realized that there was a lot of fluff. But as we networked with those 1,000, 2,000 people, we realized that there were about 20, 30 people we really wanted to grow with. And along the way, we had realized that we were looking for our tribe. We were looking for people that moved like us, that operated like us, that had visions as large as we did, and for people who we could ultimately grow with over the next 20, 30, 40 years in whatever capacity that looks like. So that was one part of it. And then the second part is, as we were financial advisors trying to build up our book of business, we weren't in the typical corporate setting. We weren't in the 9 to 5. We were building. We had early mornings. We had late nights. Our week didn't just stop at 5 on Fridays. That would carry into our weekend because we were in a commission only role trying to build up our books of business. Like, this was 24/7 for us. And as a result, it was very isolating. That was a big thing for us, that we had been on the journey, him and I, but a lot of our friends didn't necessarily understand what it is that we were going through because they weren't in the position or role that we were in. And then we realized, if we're feeling like this, there's got to be a lot of other people that are also feeling like this. So the two main things were to try and surround people with like-minded individuals and then replace the isolation. You don't need to be doing these things alone. which ultimately led us to last year in about January. We decided to push all our chips into the middle and throw an event where we would gather all like-minded individuals, put us in a room together with the goal of pulling the rope in the same direction and seeing what happens. And that ultimately last year is when the X Factor was born. It was March 6th last year, where we came in through our first event. Yeah. So 3 days ago, last year, we had about 115 people at our event, and it has taken off ever since.
Wow. Well, talk about a 1-year anniversary. So congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's definitely a pivotal moment. And, throughout your response, I think for a lot of entrepreneurs or leaders, you've definitely struck a chord when you identified that many individuals, especially you and your co-founder, experienced isolation, feeling as though that you were misunderstood, that you didn't have the necessary, I like the word you use, your tribe, to be able to come around to support you throughout this process and starting and, growing your business. So that's definitely something that we can all relate with. But I think what's really powerful in that response is that you were able to identify the issue and to bring other people around you to say, let's develop a community where we can uplift one another through that commonality, that feeling as if that we're not going at this alone, that we can actually all succeed through the gifts, talents, and capabilities that we can all bring to the table. But one thing that I definitely would love to get some additional clarification on is that you identified that the people that you were speaking to when you were networking to start your business was sharing a lot of fluff. So that's something that is very funny, because when you're networking, you don't know what you're really going to get out of the conversation. You don't know if it's going to be beneficial for you. You don't know if it's going to lead you to your next client, your next big break. But when you were identifying that the individuals that you were speaking to were not necessarily providing you with the resources or the insight that you needed, how were you able to identify that and then pivot to actually become more narrow in the types of people that you wanted to really network with, if that makes sense?
Yeah, that's a great question. First off, I want to identify if they're good people. That's the gut feeling right there. I always want to work with good people. And then that, as a result, that led to being able to cross some names off the list if they were if they were just takers and not necessarily givers, if they just asked for business without trying to provide value. Because when I go into conversations, I'm always trying to think, how can I help you? Right. And then what is the potential opportunity that we can create? So that's my mindset. And then in terms of who specifically we started targeting, one of the things that we like to ask is, and this is a standard question in networking, what are your goals for over the next year, over the next 3 years, over the 5 years? What's the big vision? What are we working towards in life? And that always sparks my interest. I was particularly looking for people with very ambitious goals, maybe scary goals, because I have scary goals myself. But it's about not only who has those goals, but then who is operating in a fast pace to try and execute on those goals. So that's what we're looking for when talking to people, who has the big visions, but then who's also going to back that up with their actions.
Perfect. Definitely, you want people with big vision, that ambitious attitude to really achieve what they put their foot forward to do. But I think where I really respectfully enjoy from this conversation is that you've kind of mastered the art of networking. In your view, what makes a networking event genuinely effective? Because as you mentioned, you've met over 1,000 to 2,000 plus people. You've networked with CEOs of companies down to janitorial staff members, which respectfully so all have great insight and input to help with the business. But how do you generally get across developing an event that actually provides what people often in turn say an ROI, the return on their investment, whether it's their time, their resources, their monetary, investment? How do you sort of quantify that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I want to clarify, Griffin is the one who plans out a majority of our events, majority of the details that come into it. And I like to gather a lot of people. I'm the one on the phones that are calling people, inviting them to the events. But for us, it's an environment thing, high energy. And it starts with the people that are invited. So everyone, when they come to our events, and we built this off of the first event. Everyone who comes to our event knows that they are there for a reason and that everybody in that room is on the pursuit to reach their full potential in some type of capacity. So just starting right there off the rip, it's definitely starts with the people that are in the room. And then from there, the energy is contagious. It's something that you just have to experience. That's how we describe our events. Now, another piece of that is also intentionality. Why are we there? We're going there to meet like-minded individuals, to build connections and create opportunity from it.
That's perfect. And I think what you've identified is the types of people that are in the room and obviously the mission of why we're going to these particular events, right? It's providing value through the intentionality. But how do you ensure people don't just meet, right, for the sake of meeting, but actually connect meaningfully at these events? Do you provide questionnaires? Is it kind of, I kind of think of it like short version of dating. They have different breakout sessions, panel discussions where people can talk to, interpersonally. Can you kind of give people an idea for what that might look like?
Yeah, so it depends. It depends on the event. So for our larger scale macro events, where we aim for 200 plus people that are there, those ones you can only do so much with the scale of that room. But when we have our smaller events, I'll give you an example. We had an event called the Deal Room about 2 months ago. And that was a specifically curated room, invite only, surrounded by anybody who is in the development process. So what we did in there is we had each person send us in an intake form based off of what it is that they do, what they were currently focused on. And then we played matchmaker in that specific setting. So everybody came in there knowing that these are the people that I needed to talk to, and here were the potential opportunities. So that was for that specific event. And then a lot of it is bootstrapping. And at the first event, we've learned a lot. We've built up a great community of X Factor community members who, alongside us, are facilitating introductions left and right, not only on who should meet, but why they should meet as well, and giving them the purpose behind it and the intentionality behind those introductions.
That's so important. Definitely the matchmaking methodology is so critical, because not only is someone going to these events with the expectation that they're going to meet someone, but they're actually being paired with someone who has those mutual interests. And that's so critical. And I think that's definitely a methodology that has proven to be very successful. But on the other end, a lot of companies in regards to Fortune 500 companies, even small businesses, tend to do networking events internally or externally to their stakeholders or those internally. What's the biggest mistake organizations make when trying to foster professional networks?
That's a great question. I want to make sure that I give you the proper answer. The biggest mistake, in my opinion, is that people will put on an event and just sit in the background, do nothing. We think, and we have our members that help us a ton with this, that energy should be flowing. Conversation should be moving. So if you come to one of our X Factor events, people are going to be pulling you off left and right. As soon as you meet somebody, I'll ask you questions, genuinely curious, and then they're going to go introduce you to somebody else. And we've built up at the first event, it was Griffin and myself that were playing matchmaker ourselves. Now, as people have gotten the hang of it, we have people that are introducing left and right. As soon as you have a conversation, you should go meet this person. And then it's building up that Rolodex at the event of resources for you. So we have a lot of great people at our event that if you're alone, somebody's going to come up and start a conversation with you. Everybody wants to talk to people at our events. Everybody wants to meet and learn about what's going on in people's world. So that's what I would say, being intentional about facilitating the conversations and making sure that people are actively engaging.
Are you enjoying this episode of the Omega Podcast? Don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment. This episode is brought to you by Omega and Company. Now, let's get back to the conversation.
Yes. And I definitely feel as though that is a vulnerability for a lot of organizations, is that they put on these large scale events and they even bring people internally to network within the organization. And like you said, there are people sitting off in the corner that are not engaging, that are not really responsive. They're kind of to themselves, or in certain instances within their own clique, and they're not really networking. It's more like a social hour for them, right? And that's not the purpose of these networking events. It's really to get outside of your initial group of friends or your initial group of coworkers coworkers and really to expand your network. And I love how you said you want to increase that energy, right? So while you're talking to someone, there might be someone else that might pull you aside into a conversation that keeps the conversation going. And I think that's very powerful because that's how you foster a greater network, a greater professional network, to be specific. Otherwise, you're limiting yourself. And, in these particular events, some people like to bring coworkers, colleagues with them, a particular spouse to really kind of help them if things get awkward, or for instance, they might feel as though the conversation ends, abruptly. Because as you know, not every single person is going to connect instantaneously. But when it comes to the success metrics that your organization uses, how do you measure the success of an event beyond just the attendance numbers?
That comes from our feedback. So Griffin and I make an effort to connect with as many people after the event as we possibly can and hear about their experience. If we didn't already priorly know them, then let's try and build a relationship with them. How was your experience? Who are some of the people that you connected with? Who are you working on? And then from there, we're going to go and try and connect them with some of our people who we think would be beneficial. And my personal philosophy when putting on an event, when attending an event, it's how can we make a change in one person's life? And we've been very fortunate to have multiple people come up to us at all of our events and tell us about what changed, how it inspired them. This is how they're going to operate differently moving forward. For me, if we can get one person who we truly made an impact on that night, that's a win for me.
Can you share with our audience any testimonials or any particular feedback that you received from one of your events that really, I like to use a term, given you the confidence to say that this method of networking is working?
Yeah. At our event that we had in September, it was called Unfinished Business. We had about 240 people that were there. We had Studio B is where we did our live discussion, and we had play as well for the networking prior and the networking after. Once the live discussion wrapped up, we had somebody come up to us and say, "Dude, this is what I've been looking for my entire life." And I had absolutely no clue. I can't thank you guys enough for putting this together. And if I had only had this 8 years ago when I had just gotten out of college, I would have been on a completely different trajectory, but I am so grateful that it is here now. And just hearing it in his voice, like seeing him in that interaction, that's all it takes, is that one person who we truly helped take that 180 and really gave them something that they didn't even know that they were looking for, but that they needed.
Yeah, that definitely is a powerful testimony, just being able to meet the needs of some of those that are attending these events and just being able to hear from them verbatim that this actually impacted me in a positive way. And that's the momentum that you need for your next event. I mean, your numbers are climbing. I mean, if you're stating that you guys are bringing in 200, 300 plus individuals to networking events and you're able to fill these studios, that's incredible. That means that people are, I use the term thirsty, or really desiring for this type of community, this type of networking. And the more that your X Factor group continues to put on these events, I mean, the sky's the limit. You guys can probably put on conferences, and it can be a 2 to 3 day long event during a weekend. I mean, truly, like I said, the sky is the limit. But if we would like to turn back the clock a little bit, and you think back to a year ago when you first initially started X Factor with your co-founder, what advice would you give either yourself or someone else who's about to attend their first major industry event?
Come in with an open mind. I think people will come in searching for one thing, which is great because that touches on the intentionality aspect. But an open mind, what can you learn from people? I feel like when people are coming to events, they're looking, what can I get out of this? What can I get out of that? Where if we flip that, what can I learn from somebody and how can I give to somebody? So being able to identify, all right, when I'm in this conversation, what can I learn from that person and what opportunity could we potentially create from this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a fantastic response, being open-minded, because like you said, it can feel very transactional. Like, I'm here to get fill in the blank, get a job, right? I have my resume and I'm ready to bring it to said decision maker to get this particular job. But if you switch it and you look at it as if I'm going to these corporate events with the idea that I'm here to learn, that I'm here to upskill, that I'm here to meet other individuals that are meant to challenge me intellectually and to make me a better version of myself, that really provides that individual an advantage, because you're not going with the desperation to receive, but you're in desperation to absorb and to also to give what you know, right? And I think in turn, it kind of resolves that issue of getting whatever it is that you're going to receive, right? So I think if you flip the script and go in with an understanding that you're there to learn and that you're there to give your knowledge and your input and your experiences, you just never know how those conversations might matriculate into said opportunity, right? And I think holistically, networking is about finding commonality with other individuals, other like-minded individuals, and finding that fundamental ground that we can help each other, right? And I think it goes back to your original response, creating a tribe with other visionaries that are seeking to achieve greater things. And that's so great. I think to capitalize on that response, in your opinion, what is the most undervalued skill for building a professional community?
Playing the long game. Building off that point that we had just talked about, what can I learn? How can I create an opportunity? I think a lot of times people are so focused on what they need now and what they need today. But I personally know what my long-term vision is. And I know that I'm going to need a lot of help along the way in order to build on that large vision that I have. My vision isn't just for me. My vision is for X Factor and all the people that are in X Factor. And this is the shared vision with Griffin. And Griffin is the definition of a visionary. That kid, he can dream big. His visions are very large, and I'm so grateful to have a partner who can think as big as he can. So to turn that back to the original question, being able to play the long game and knowing, all right, this is where I want to go. These are the different steps that I'm going to need to take and achieve along the way. And then being able to plug those different pieces in for the different parts of the journey.
Yeah. I think playing the long game is definitely an important tactic. I think of the game of chess. It's like, how are you going to move all of your pieces effectively? That way you're on the offense, but you're also on defense, right? And I think playing the long game is, in essence, the same necessary skill that is very important for any success, right? And I think when you try to make it a skill, I kind of look at patience, different attributes of patience, acknowledging that not every single encounter is going to materially benefit you today, for instance, but through consistency, through repeated interactions, that it could lead to something greater. Perfect example, you and I, Tommy, we met a couple of years ago and we definitely had some great interactions. And, through the consistency and through seeing each other at different events, we've been able to develop, I would say, a very strong friendship that has materially developed into us, doing this amazing podcast episode. So it definitely is important, that playing the long game does have its benefits. But, when it comes to the long game, it goes back to your original response, having a vision, having a target, right? Because many people can have a vast vision and they can, have big ambitions, and that is fantastic and great and all, but without developing goals and steps to actually take to get there, a vision is, again, just a vision. There's work and there's necessary strategic steps that need to come into place to actually get to those visions or to make those visions a reality. So when it comes to X Factor particularly, what is next for X Factor's vision of connection and collaboration in the corporate world?
Yeah, so to start, we certainly want to make sure that we get up and running, fully executed in Boston, in the New England area, and be able to expand, be able to take this across the country. Now, we have X Factor in our X Factor ecosystem. We do have national connections, but right now, most of it comes from being in person at these events. ultimately we want to be able to have X Factor across the country. So that way, when people travel, they know who they can go meet up with. Have X Factor everywhere. So definitely solidifying our Boston area in process, iron out the kinks. We only started about a year ago. We know where we want to go, but there are different things that need to happen along the way. But yeah, have a national network of ambitious hustlers who are all pulling the rope in the same direction on the journey to becoming the best version of themselves, personally, professionally, and financially, in that order.
Perfect. I think it definitely is an enriching time to be able to work toward that, especially as a community. And like you said, the vision is not accomplished yet, but what you've been able to accomplish in over, it's funny because it's only been 365 days plus 3 days. So do the math. It's really been less than 400 days that you've accomplished so much, and the trajectory and the momentum that your organization has is just phenomenal. I think for many listeners, they probably are curious to understand, how did you come up with the name X Factor and why?
I didn't. This was Griffin. And this comes back to a devotional book that he had, actually. So when Griffin, I don't want to tell his story too much, but when Griffin was in college, he had a consulting company called It Factor. And as he was going through his devotional one day, there was actually a line that I can send you a picture of it. I don't have the exact line in it, but talking about how X Factor is the power of God within you. And we can use this to ultimately build up to our full potential. Again, I will make sure to send that over to you, but this was Griffin through and through with the name X Factor. And I'm sitting here looking at our plaque right above me. The X Factor was born about a year ago, and we are very, very excited to see it grow.
Yeah, and I think it's very powerful how during his time reading a devotional and how his faith also played a very critical role in him stepping out and starting such a successful organization so quickly. I mean, if you were to look back a year or maybe 2 years, Tommy, and you were contemplating starting a business, and you probably were thinking at the time, oh, I don't have the resources, all these things. What particular advice would you give to perhaps a younger version of you that was perhaps in limbo, trying to figure out what next steps were, and to look at yourself now and the success you've been able to attain?
2 pieces to this. 1, you got to believe. Belief is everything. Faith is everything. And 2, and we got this from Tripp from that first discussion, don't quit. There's a middle word in there, but don't quit. Can't quit. Can't lose if you don't quit.
Wow. Well, I think for many of our audience are probably like, there's a lot of pauses throughout this conversation, but I want them to acknowledge the pauses, recognize an exclamation, because these are very powerful statements that Tommy is sharing to us. And it really is a command, I believe, to really believe in yourself, right? It's not good to second guess yourself because, and I love your quote, when you have God as the foundation, there's no peak to what you can build. Mm-hmm. And I think that is such an incredible quote statement that resonates with millions across the globe. But as we reach the conclusion of our conversation, what are some last remarks that you would like to give to our listeners about X Factor and what the future holds?
If you're somebody with a big vision who's scared to tell other people their vision because of how they might be perceived, how they might be judged, who others might think are crazy for thinking like that, come find us because we want to meet you. We want to meet the hustlers. We want to meet the givers. We want to meet the go-getters. We built this environment for you. This is way beyond Griffin and myself. We just happened to start it. But this isn't about us. This is way bigger than us. This is about a group of givers all pulling the rope in the same direction for something that is bigger than themselves. So if any of this resonated with you guys, come find us.
What are some contact details that you can share with our audience?
Yeah. The best way to find us is we have a LinkedIn, and our main is the social media page at the X Factor Group. And that is the best way to come and find us. We have a school platform as well that people can apply for. But X Factor is where most of our information is.
That is amazing. Well, you heard Tommy. The X Factor is the group for you. And again, Tommy, thank you so much for being on the Omega Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Keenan.